So I just am leaving the hospital after spending the night with Mamu, and I'll pick up where Julie left off. We were in a room in the ER with Julie at about 12:30, I think, and at that point the doctor, the admitting doctor, seemed to think that it was 3 possibilities, which was the bacterial blood infection, the infection that Julie mentioned in relation to her knee, her skin problems, and then settling in the knee, and then the third being a small stroke or a series of small strokes that they wanted to do an MRI in order to find out if that was the case. And so even if it was a small stroke or series of strokes, they will catch it in the MRI. They will show that, and they have ways of controlling that with medication so that she doesn't continue to have them in the future. So she was treated for the bacterial infection just as a precaution right away. They gave her 1 antibiotic drip down in the ER while we were waiting to be transferred upstairs to her room, and then they gave her another antibiotic drip once we got up there, along with an IV bag, and they gave her some crushed up melatonin to get her to sleep, and I think that was it for the medication last night. So we were transferred up to her room, which is 302B.
Correct.
And I would say not to call. And the nurse there had a series of questions for me, and Mamu was wide awake, getting settled in, and the nurse was continued to ask her a lot of real-time questions, like, do you know where you are, and just finding out about her cognitive abilities. And she still seemed to have trouble remembering anything short-term, but knew all of the long-term right away. The year and the president, and she said some funny stuff about that guy. I don't remember what she said. Oh, that man. Her tone totally changed. So when we were upstairs, she ate a tangerine type thing. She ate the entire thing and seemed to really enjoy it. It was pretty flavorless but juicy. And for some reason, from going downstairs to upstairs, she was unable to suck out of a straw as we were doing downstairs. So she was holding the straw in her mouth and saying that she was sucking, but she wasn't able to. And so I took out the straw and tried giving her sips, which the nurse recommends now to not give her fluids through a straw, that it's better that they actually drink from the cup. And she was biting the cup and holding it in her mouth and wouldn't let go, saying that she couldn't get it in the right position, that she didn't have the tools weren't working in the cup, like there was something wrong with the cup. She wanted me to change it. So finally got her to drink some water. So I feel like she's drinking a good amount of fluids. I just would pick up water whenever, without asking her if she wanted any, and just put it to her lips, and she would drink, and she would drink a good amount. So I think that's probably the key, and just with little things like that, that just to present it in front of her, and she just drank it. So she was swallowing. After a while, we got her to put the water in her mouth and swallow. Then I have to call you back, Mom. So she was fully wide awake in the middle of the night, certain point, when the nurse came in to ask her questions, she said, "Where are you?" And Mamu said, "Europe." And she started talking about this town that we had to build in Europe. The nurse was asking her where she lived, and she was at Kaiser in Walnut Creek, and she was asking her where she lived in Walnut Creek, if she lived in a house or an apartment. And she said, the buildings, and then started going into this very elaborate story about, very detailed, about how we had to build the town and construct the churches, and something about a Catholic church, and there were 2 priests and all in the congregation, and all of these people were depending on us, and she had to stay awake. She couldn't sleep because they were depending on her because she had the details to explain. She prepared the details, and she was saying to me, "We need to get the pieces, all of the little pieces here, so that we can build the town." And then she started going very into deep, detailed story about the church, and it became very intense fast. And she was very convinced and about this church, and being the only one that had these details that she had to explain to the congregation so that this could all work in the church group. And the nurse tried coming in. We were really trying to get her to sleep. She was wide awake talking about this, and she was starting to raise her voice, and she was starting to uncover herself and starting to sit up, and I could tell that she was trying to get up out of bed, and so the nurse kept coming back and trying to reason with her. But at that point, she was completely gone, just in this other world about the congregation is depending on her, and they need her to explain how this whole thing is going. She's the only one with all of the instructions, and it was scary that she was that far gone. And so I started to tell her that she couldn't, she said, "The congregation needs me, and I said, "Mamu, we need you, your family needs you to stay here and rest and take care of yourself and get better." And she was trying to get out of bed, and I was asking the nurse, "Is there anything else we can possibly give her?" And they didn't want to give her any more of anything because they said they try not to do that. But I just felt it was so important for her to sleep and get that rest, and she was just wide awake. So she had slept for about a half an hour right after she got the melatonin, but then the neighbor who was in the same room had to be moved, and so everyone turned on the lights, and that's when she was wide awake and started to get into this story. So the nurse was going to talk to her supervisor about seeing if they could get someone to come into the room to make sure she didn't get out of bed, and so I had to physically hold her down, and she was very strong, pushing me, and got pretty upset with me and was raising her voice and saying, "You need to leave me alone. You need to just let me do this. I need to do it. It's time for you to leave me alone. You need to let me get up." And she was very much telling me with this authority, she was so convinced. And I was just telling her over and over, "You can't get up. You're sick. You need to lay down and get your rest," and holding her down, her arms down, so she couldn't get up. It was very scary. And the nurse came back in, and she stopped trying to reason with her, and I think eventually she just got tired, started to roll over, and at least she had stopped talking about this story, this long, elaborate story. And the nurse and I were making plans for if she continued, and she seemed to stop, and so we just tried and turned out the lights, and I think she fell asleep. So she slept from about 2:30 to 3 to about, when did I call you? 6:30?
Yeah.
Or something. And they had to wake her up. They let her sleep an hour longer than they had planned to get more blood. They took a lot of blood, vials of blood, for new things they're testing for. And then she's going to have the MRI this morning. So they said they were just waiting for her to be called. So I talked to her about the MRI. When she woke up this morning, she was very groggy, wanted to sleep longer. So we had to struggle with her to get her eyes open to keep her stay awake. But she was back. She knew she was at Kaiser. She knew who I was. She knew, she needed that sleep. So I think the most important thing for her now is just to get sleep, because that's contributing to her delirium